Hello, Dr. Childress here. Welcome to my Foundation series. In this particular video sequence, we're talking about the application of family systems constructs to attachment-related pathologies surrounding divorce. So we've talked about how Salvador Minuchin has provided a description of the pathology and a diagram of the pathology. So this is exactly the diagram of what we're looking at. Father and son in a coalition against the mother. You see the triangle, you see the emotional cutoff, you see the enmeshed relationship. And then Jay Haley provides the actual definition of the pathology over here, and in a section that he calls the perverse triangle. And I want to discuss why Jay Haley calls it a perverse triangle, which is because the pathology, the coalition, is crossing generational boundaries. So it's a parent and child in a coalition against the other parent. And we never, ever want to see things crossing generational boundaries. That's just a disturbing pathology. It is the most prototypical example of a parent crossing generational boundaries and violating the child's autonomy. Is sexual abuse, incest, where the parent uses the child to meet the parent's needs. And that's always a cross-generational coalition. The parent is using the child to meet the parent's needs. So that we don't like to see that. We like to see the conflict among parents stay up at this level and not bring the child in. So with this pathology, where we have one child rejecting a parent, there is a disturbing feature of that violation of the child's integrity. And I want to move over here now to some quotes by Craig in the Journal of Emotional Abuse, and you can see that there. And what Craig says about this violation of generational boundaries is she says, the breakdown of appropriate generational boundaries between parents and children significantly increases the risk of emotional abuse. So immediately as we get into the cross-generational coalition and that violation of boundaries, the perverse triangle, the issue of emotional abuse of the child comes up. Craig also describes that in the throes of their own insecurity, troubled parents may rely on the child to meet the parent's emotional needs, turning to the child to provide the parent with support, nurturance, or comforting. Ultimately, preoccupation with the parent's needs threatens to interfere with the child's ability to develop autonomy, initiative, self-reliance, and secure internal working models of self and other. When parent-child boundaries are violated, the implications for developmental psychopathology are significant. Poor boundaries interfere with the child's capacity to progress through development, which, as Anna Freud suggested, is a defining feature of childhood psychopathology. Craig there is talking about the damaging effects, and they're immensely damaging effects psychologically, to a parent who violates the child's integrity, that diffuse boundaries in the parent-child relationship. And surrounding attachment-related pathology following divorce, the concern as a clinical psychologist I have in that perverse triangle is when it involves a cross-gender feature as well. So we have a father who is in a cross-generational coalition with his daughter against the mother. And there, when we have that cross-generational coalition, the boundary violations, it starts to get very uncomfortable. That in that case, a father's alliance with the daughter is replacing the mother in the hierarchy, in the role relationship to the father. So she's essentially replacing her mother in the spousal relationship with her father through that cross-generational coalition. And oh my goodness, we never, ever, ever want to see the daughter in a spousal relationship with her father, especially one that's rejecting her mother. Oh my goodness, we're just looking at all sorts of psychological issues in that poor girl. And it contains that psychologically incestuous component, which is why Jay Haley called it a perverse triangle. And then alternatively, when we have the cross-gender of the boy in a cross-generational coalition with his mother against the father, And so that's the boy is now replacing his father in the spousal role with his mother. Oh my goodness, that's going to create all sorts of damaging implications for the son, who's in a psychologically incestuous relationship with his mother, having replaced his father. There's 20 years of psychoanalysis on my couch just from that alone. And so that's a very disturbing pathology because of the ripples it contains of that sexual abuse violation of the child's integrity. So, oh my goodness, we never ever want to see a cross-generational coalition in any parent-child relationship, but particularly around the cross-gender relationships. Another quote, another description from Craig describes the process by which this cross-generational coalition of forms, or the diffusion of boundaries, impacts the child. So according to Craig, rather than telling the child directly what to do or think, as does the behaviorally controlling parent, the psychologically controlling parent uses indirect hints and responds with guilt induction or withdrawal of love if the child refuses to comply. In short, an intrusive parent strives to manipulate the child's thoughts and feelings in such a way that the child's psyche will conform to the parent's wishes. And that again has these sexual abuse, incestuous overtones that are disturbing. Now, I'm not saying there's sexual abuse of the child in this pathology. My guess is it was somewhere up in the multi-generational kinds of components. So we're talking Murray Bowen in that, the multi-generational trauma in that. But in this particular generational iteration, I'm not suspecting that there's child abuse with the child, but it carries a ripple of that incestuous violation of the child's boundaries that is deeply disturbing. And that's why Craig wrote in the Journal of Emotional Child Abuse. So getting the child's psyche to conform to the parent's wishes, that's a lot of what the father in that sexual abuse thing, it's not a sexual issue, it's a destructive violation of the child. And so the child's reaction, Craig describes that, in order to carve out an island of safety and responsivity in an unpredictable, harsh, and depriving parent-child relationship with the allied narcissistic borderline parent in this pathology, children of highly maladaptive parents may become precocious caretakers who are adept at reading the cues and meeting the needs of those around them. The ensuing preoccupied attachment with the parent interferes with the child's development of important ego functions, such as self-organization, affect regulation, and emotional object constancy. So that is an amazingly insightful and complete description by Craig of the child's response to the cross-generational coalition and the violation of integrity and autonomy by the allied narcissistic borderline parent. And I want to unpack that description a little bit. So follow me over to the next section and I'll discuss that a little bit.